Hey everybody, I'm Sean Robinson.
I'm Carson Grubaugh, and we're back for Volume 2 of Star Wars Dark Empire.
Dig back a little bit and take a look at Volume 1 if you want to follow along, because we're going to be talking a lot about some of the same things and sort of connecting some of those same threads. But Carson, load up that Kindle. We didn't get this in print because we didn't have a ton of time to do this. I used to have copies of every single one of these that I bought back in the day. Dark Empire 2 came out 2 years after Dark Empire 1. If I were Cam Kennedy and I had drawn this for a year, I probably would have slept for about 3 years. Afterwards.
Not just drawn it, painted, hand painted every. And it's obviously he's doing all. It's like he's the one doing all of it because he's making all of the compositional decisions.
Right.
We left off talking about the influence of like poster art and stuff on this. Like you can't just be the guy who draws that and pass it off to a colorist. Like this is someone's vision all the way through.
In fact, we should probably at some point, if we ever do a Cam Kennedy color analysis, it would be fun to do one of these panels and just, we don't have to draw the whole thing or try to actually treat it like him, but to actually try to create the colors.
We could get some pH dyes and do that.
Yeah, I've got a set. But
I have some at work. I'd have to buy my own. Those are for the students.
This is another use of the thing we were talking about in the first volume, where every time he shows something on a screen, in order to emphasize the screenness of it, he draws it directly in the colored ink instead of the black ink. And like we were saying in the previous video, you can mix that up any way you want to and just draw with it with a nib or a brush, just like you would normal ink. The only thing is that unless he's using like an India ink instead of a dye, you'd want to do that as the last stage, because those will run a little bit if you get them wet again afterwards.
Yeah. And I mean, it's again, another one of those things of like, it's not just someone who's penciling and someone who's inking and someone who's coloring. This is an artist who's doing the complete page and has like this really thorough vision for what it's going to be and the techniques in which order that it's going to take to pull that off. Here's some
these are the battle scenes that were getting me to wax poetic about the sort of grittiness of some of these comics, where you get these monstrous machines and the tiny little human figures collapsed underneath. Something about the scale of having both those simultaneously is quite compelling. These figures marching behind their
and even though there's some stormtroopers
robots.
I was actually really surprised that like I didn't notice a stormtrooper until well into the second volume. Like when a stormtrooper finally showed up, I was like, wow, I've been reading the Star Wars thing, and like, I mean, there were some in there, but they're kind of subordinated to all of this. So that was interesting to me too. I'm so used to like stormtroopers as like the thing. So it's interesting that they've really picked up on a lot of the characters and a lot of design elements, but they've also, stuff like this, added their new machines and stuff to it, but it all feels Star Wars still.
Yeah, I think you could probably make a pretty good argument that the Stormtrooper is the worst addition to the Star Wars from a moral standpoint, the worst addition to the Star Wars, whole thing, because by making them uniform and by putting their faces concealed by masks, it really does just kind of give the idea that the Empire is this just faceless enemy that you're free to kill at will, which really I think is the sort of dehumanization that leads to any kind of conflict. And I think that stuff impresses on people at a young age. The enemy is inhumane. That's the reason that they're not really people. Whereas the sort of Tom Veitch, Cam Kennedy viewpoint being espoused is, even though the evil characters are still evil, there's more of a sort of like collateral damage of war, and you get the idea that like the people who even the people who turn them in do it for good reasons in a sense. because they're like, they're oppressed by this. They don't want to get killed and squashed by the bad guys,
Yeah, and like it's okay. It's like when we were looking at Ninja Turtles, like it's okay to kill what do they call them? The foot
Right.
soldiers, because they're robots, and so you get that same sense. I think the newer Star Wars movies tried to humanize the stormtroopers in a more interesting way. And I will say, I really do like the Mandalorian, or the first two seasons of it. Haven't enjoyed the Boba Fett, but I've really enjoyed in the Mandalorian, because he's an actual like outsider and individualist. He also runs up against, like, okay, the rebellion has now won and become the dominating power, but they still have a police force that's like imposing their value set on people. And so, to like the Mandalorian guy, they're both authoritarian figures. It's just you replace the empire with the rebellion.
Right.
But the rebellion becomes an overarching power structure. And that, I don't think you really see that in the original Star Wars movies. It's
Right.
very much like good versus evil, or the good guys, they're the bad guys. In the Mandalorian, they do a really, really good job of being like, look, they're both political parties trying to get what they want. They're both shitty. They're both like shit to live underneath. The rebellion, the police officers are a little bit more friendly, I guess, but there's still an authoritarian figure.
Those ideas were really explored somewhat in the Marvel Star Wars comics that came after people stopped caring when the sales are diving, post Return of the Jedi. They have some they have some issues where like Leia is tired of having meetings, or like Han can't get into his bank account because he's supposed to be dead.
Where like a power structure is inhibited no matter what.
Exactly. And then there's one where you meet a stormtrooper who's basically just a guy trying to get paid, essentially. He's like a contractor working for the worst possible group, and because the people they weren't under pressure, because it wasn't like a big thing anymore. I think that they could kind of take those avenues, and you see some of that here.
So this is when we were talking about how it feels like part of the Star Wars universe too. They start introducing new Jedis, and like the costuming, it doesn't feel like they went and created like some crazy new, like the temptation would be to make the next toy. Right? Like this crazy cool looking costume. I don't know, it's just kind of like a normal looking dude with like a shirt on, which is like what Luke Skywalker is basically throughout the first few, and Han Solo. He's just like a guy with like a vest on and stuff.
Yeah.
The bad guys, the bad guys tend to have a little bit more flair to them. But I noticed that. I thought that was really consistent with like what Star Wars feels like. Also noticed that this one character every time looks more reference to me.
Mon Mothma. He seems a little bit paranoid about missing that. I wonder if anybody had approval on likenesses on this particular thing. I don't know if this predates that kind of micromanagement. But nowadays, if you were to make a licensed comic from a big property, it is probable that somebody would have approval of what they look like in every panel.
Oh, well, I don't know. It's just that because it's such a peculiar face too, with like the more masculinized feminine face. I don't know. He seems to have struggled with that, and like those seem more traced to me. And I noticed that a number of times throughout. And it's such a, like, I feel like I know that face, but I know I've watched the Star Wars movies, but it just feels like somebody I know in my day-to-day life in a way that the other drawings just look like comic book drawings.
Yeah, she's only in a handful of scenes. I don't know how they cast her or whatever, but she's like she's got that kind of bland face we've talked about a few times, where it's hard to to find a feature to hook onto if you're trying to draw a likeness of somebody. Like we've talked about William Shatner, what a pain in the ass he is to draw.
And
his
Kevin
face.
Spacey.
Yeah. William Shatner, when you're looking at him moving, is the most, mobile, livable face and you're actually trying to draw him, it doesn't look like him because he's it's like it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll put another plug for my Grantman what WTF book that we'll be putting out eventually. I had to draw Kevin Spacey a bunch in that. That was one of the kind of Easter eggs in there, is Kevin Spacey from The Usual Suspects. And Kevin Spacey has that same, like when you look at him, you feel like he has a very peculiar face, right? He's got the
right.
jowls and all this stuff. But fucking drawn Kevin Spacey, he's just like a bland white guy with like a high hairline, especially younger Kevin Spacey. And it's so hard to do. So I really learned about that on that project that I did for myself. Look at this page though.
Yeah.
There's that colored ink line too. That's so good. That's at the holograms. They've got this special, like, it's like Superman's crystals, but it's a Jedi cube that explains the history of the Jedis. And in this book, Luke's basically going around like kind of finding and training and collecting new Jedis, which I think is like a really fun extension of the original Star Wars movies, that like it's like the return of the Jedi, like they're coming back. There's going to be
Yeah.
more of them.
And if the idea is that there's some type of inherent, influence that certain people have, then you should be able to find those people and gather them and cultivate them. And so they end up on this place where there's a whole group of them. Man, I love the cloaks there in the bottom panel there.
Yeah, and this guy too, this Cedrus, another one of these where it feels like well within the Star Wars realm without getting too exaggerated. But like you would also, if there was an actor playing that character, they would become like Han Solo or someone really particular. There's some Moebius for you, huh?
Oh yeah.
Lit. Yeah, but this guy, I mean, he looks like a bad guy, and I don't know who would you cast to play that dude?
Sid Vicious.
Sid Vicious. Yeah, is that where the Sidrus name comes from? And there's someone in here named Cam too, which I thought was funny because when you sent me look at I don't like that Dracula, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't like the Dracula Emperor. That looks a little off target to me. But yeah, you can imagine this guy being played by someone real without having a crazy costume, still being as memorable as Han Solo or Luke Skywalker.
You could probably get Sting to do it if you gave him a false nose.
Yeah, broke his nose.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's interesting that you have those memorable characters that don't, like Boba Fett has a very particular look. Chewbacca has a look. Darth Vader has like a costume. But like Luke and Han, and they kind of have a costume, but they're kind of just like a guy in like short, jeans and a t-shirt, basically. But like they stand out, and I do feel like the extra Jedis and Sith, I guess they just call them dark Jedis in this, but they have that quality of just a regular guy who's still memorable.
It's always a little jarring to see the Dave Dorman images right up against the Cam Kennedy ones, because Dave Dorman is obviously painting with acrylic. I mean, maybe possibly oil, but anyway, it's a whole. He's using it opaquely, and pretty much that's all he does. And then Cam Kennedy, everything is transparent. It's just obviously the drawing differences aside, it's an interesting choice. I'm sure that somebody at Dark Horse is just like, we're going to pony up to have, movie poster covers.
Yeah,
well, who's available?
He kind of does like the Drew Struzan, who's like the real Star Wars artist, and then Dave Dorman's like the other guy you get that kind of does the same thing with like the scrape texture that you color on top of, and some of the use of color and stuff. But it gets the Drew Struzan poster look. But yeah, this shit's way cooler and would have made probably more. Cam Kennedy's design abilities would have made for way more
compelling
like
colors.
Boom, like jump. Look at that.
Yeah, I just love that right there.
And I think like this probably contributed, this and that Boba Fett series. I know people like Boba Fett, but I think in the canon of the fandom, I think these things added to the legend of like why people love Boba Fett so much is his appearance in these comics.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird to note. So Todd Klein is obviously a brilliant letterer, and everything. It's odd that he didn't give Boba Fett his own scalloped bubble, given that he always has that kind of
Yeah.
voice.
You don't really get any of that in here. That might have just been like, they're like, hey, don't, like one thing you got to think about with something like this is you're potentially getting your audience are people who don't typically read comics, like when you're doing licensed stuff. So it's like the no fuckery that would require like higher level comic reading skills, maybe like keep it simple.
Right. Yeah. From a storytelling standpoint, I really, it's just funny how often we talk about, compositional things or formal tricks and stuff like that. There's almost none of that. I noticed like one thing in the the 300 something pages, which was a earlier Leia's lightsaber going into a previous panel and making it look like they're having a battle. But
very big, boom, 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 clear. Like you don't have to know how to read comics to work your way through these pages. So I wonder if that was like either Todd Klein was just kind of aware of that, or if there was any kind of top-down editorial influence on like, yeah, we know you can do these really fun word balloons, and like the Wookiees could have like their own, like they kind of do. They kind of have like this, like blah, 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 like little bubbly.
Will you go back 2 pages real quick?
Here he's doing it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of it. I don't know. I don't. This bottom panel here, where you see the gun, and then you see the guy who's ordered it, and then you see the carnage to the other side.
Yeah, they're like shooting him first.
Just the depth on display here, and how he juggles all the depths with the color. I mean, it's quite amazing.
And also thematically, like kind of the responsibility.
Yeah.
Like he captures the responsibility, because these guys are just, okay, well, the boss says so.
Right.
So that is like a formal trick, but it's not something that you really notice unless you stop and talk about it.
Right.
Those colors are way cool.
Yeah.
And I like that he'll do the black and then it's like colored over. And so it gives like a weird cast to the whole thing. It makes it glow.
It seems like he's, it might be just a production thing, but that is more or less emphasized on different pages.
It seems intentional to me, because he's so intentional with color. It's almost like, oh, okay, I'm going to paint my blacks a little diluted, and then I'm going to color over them, because you'll see areas then where like all of a sudden the black gets a little bit darker.
Right. Including on the person being shot there, in the pouches and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, when you're doing this, that they're going to be photographing a certain way, that they can't overblow the blacks. So the blacks are going to, if they're not super saturated, they're going to read as not saturated. He knew all that. He'd seen 6 issues of this printed 2 years prior. So I think that's very intentional, and I like it. It changes the cast of that page to this page, even in the blacks.
Right. It's just gorgeous. I mean, the drawing is just, I can't imagine trying to hold a standard like that from page to page.
Look at that. That's badass.
Yeah.
Lighting and coloring. And then boom, again, like that big color switch for the compliment.
Down into the, yep. Yeah. So we've got a transition page right here. It really is like a crossfade between 2 songs.
Yeah, it's really smart. Really, really smart.
Now we're down into the grotto here. Oh man, that extreme lighting there.
I like this fight between Boba and Chewie. I like how he draws Chewie almost like he hasn't eaten enough. Like he's really skinny and shaggy. I noticed that especially in this scene where Chewie just really looks like a stray. Like that, it was that drawing right there. He looks like this big shaggy. He looks like the Farley out of For Better or For Worse.
Holding the helmet up in his hand.
Yeah. I should get Cammy in here because she does really good Chewie noises. Just get her worked up and she starts talking like Chewie. Yeah, so I don't, can you, because by this point I was having a hard time reading a lot of the
Yeah. So,
details.
there's the dark Jedis are assembling at the same time as Luke is sort of gathering his team, and Luke and Leia have been directed to go to this planet by the cube that they stole from the Emperor. They've been directed to go to this particular place, and they're about to arrive at that place, and they're simultaneously being followed by the Emperor's new dark Jedi, this guy who's like a true believer. There's like a lot of infighting going on, but this particular guy is a true believer. So here's a probe droid. They shoot the probe droid, and then they meet some of the natives on the planet, but not before seeing this awesome thing here.
Which is like
Millennia
the old
ago,
Jedi stronghold.
right? When the Jedi Knights were strong, Ossus was teeming with cities. Now it is a world abandoned in ruins and precipitous canyons decorated with battle-scarred murals. And I love this right here, where you get to see one of the murals as they're flying by.
And you see him pick up on the Mayan kind of influences. Right. Yeah.
While having a sort of training helmet, it's like the training helmet from the first Star Wars film. As a Mayan.
Yeah, filtered through like Mayan abstraction. It's super cool.
It really reminds me of that particular aspect, little slice there reminds me of a scene of this book called the Book of the New Sun, which is my estimation, one of the greatest uses of science fantasy ever. And a character, it's all described because it's just a book, there's no illustrations. There's a scene where a character is having to flee from somebody, and he has to flee down the side of a mountain, and he's describing the strata of the different places as he's going by, and he sees a mural that he's essentially climbing down the side of a mural as he's going by.
I'm actually surprised, talking about strata, that he didn't get more wild with the color there. But you can see in little, like that right there, that little bit right there is that mural that he zooms in on. That's a great piece of storytelling. You can see that same hood shape. And there are, I wish we could zoom in, there are other little figures throughout there. Yeah, so they're meeting like this more. I was also paying attention to like how hard it must be to write nonsense language, because he's obviously not just like banging on his keyboard, because if you do that, it's all like LK, LLLJ, LK, like I thought, man, that's got to be hard as a writer to write fake language.
Yeah, I mean,
some Star Wars language code
he gets
book
to
he had access to.
He gets to show off a little bit. It's interesting. Like Tom Veitch being a writer on this, I really wonder. Like, so on one hand, it must be a real pleasure to know that everything that you describe is going to be carried off by somebody who can draw that bottom panel there.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it must be a little odd to like, you probably couldn't help but feeling like everything that you do is going to be comparatively overshadowed, but
well, I mean, I think that's what you would want in this case, though. You really want you want it to sync up like that. It's not like when we were looking at Puma Blues, where it's that typical thing from the late 80s, early 90s, where the writing and the art has separated, and you get like a really literary writer and a really illustrative artist kind of sitting next to each other. Like, this is more, in my mind, like what I like about comics is when they sync up like that. I mean, there are good reasons, like in Puma Blues, where you separate them out for philosophical reasons. But yeah, I mean, I think most writers kind of want this. I like this too, the big Jedi tree.
Yeah.
This tree,
the tree is the spirit of the thing that they've been talking to in the cube. It, basically the tree gets in a fight with the dark Jedi that they're with.
Look at that explosion.
Explodes. And that's fantastic. And look at that. So you can imagine the color work that went into that particular bottom panel there. As you can see the different layers at work.
And again, the risk of like, man, if that bleeds too much.
Right.
Actually, probably you could go back with wet and erase out through there. You're more of a watercolor guy than I am. So
Yeah,
look at this.
maybe.
This is cool.
Uh-huh.
That's all one background.
Yeah. It's like the after explosion, like the sort of dust settling light
But like he
effect.
masked this off and painted it all as one because that's just the
Mhm.
same colors and the same motion. So even though the camera's changing, there's kind of a unity there. That's really nice.
Yeah, this technique of using the balloons after the fact is not only the thing that enables the really painterly color. It also, if you think about it, when you're working with a licensed comic that is pretty likely to be translated, is very, very smart. Um, I was I had a friend in Seattle who was a cartoonist who was working on a painted comic, and I really had to just. One day was just like, you got to do this on an overlay. If
Well,
your
yeah,
book
I
is
mean,
successful,
we've now got Strange Death being translated into Spanish and Italian, and I'm
right?
thinking, what a nightmare. Like my original 24 pages I did for it, we did all digital lettering. But everything after that, I did what Dave did, which was draw the empty word balloon. Like he would type it out at size and then draw the empty word balloon, and I would draw the empty word balloon. And then there's
Right.
so much lettering that's like part of the image too. Anytime someone is like, hey, we want to translate that, I'm like, yeah, that's awesome, thank you, but you are out of your damn mind. Like, I don't know how you, and I'm more aware of that now too, reading like the manga and stuff. Like when it really looks like the lettering's part of the art, I'm thinking, man, you've been doing a lot of this digitally or some other way.
We're gonna have to zip through some of this here, just kind of noticing some of the color uh, stuff as we go, and
Well, you
the
want to just give a summary of how the story
wow. I
wraps
mean,
up?
well, um, yeah,
Go
we
read
could
it
do that.
yourself. Go read
Yeah,
it yourself.
let's just kind of enjoy the flow of the color here, and maybe hit a few more. You know,
Oh,
uh,
here's
yeah, this
another.
guy.
This is from Frank Miller's Ronin, the guy that
Ah,
starts off Ronin with no arms.
right. I had forgotten about that.
That
That's very
guy.
interesting.
Yeah, what's his name?
That Billy
That's the guy in
in Ronin, his name is Billy. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, this
half man
character,
encased.
His Royal Eminence King Empatogios of Ganath, and he's a Jedi as well, and
Yeah, that's Billy
has no
from
arms and
Ronin.
legs. Yeah, very interesting.
So looking at the in-call kind of trajectory again.
Yeah,
And I think like this one too, a lot of the robots and stuff start to look more particular. They look more 2000 AD to me and a little bit less Star Wars. Like,
he's got those insect-like ones that are
yeah,
quite interesting. I also love that the arm popping out on the previous page. You can just see it as a little
the
a
hand.
little teaser there.
Yeah.
Just horrible. Oh. Yeah, it's interesting as they kind of get away from in the second series, we've got more distance from the events of the movies. You sort of have an accumulation of the original, as in newly created things. They have sort of start to have their own momentum, which is, I think, is an inevitable thing when you're writing a sequel to an existing thing, is that the more you make, the more sort of forward momentum you have with the new concepts.
I
That's
think
a
that's
beautiful one right there.
appropriate. It's still appropriate. Yeah, that top panel.
Yeah, and the sort of spooky flatness of the sun, or whatever it is that's
Yeah.
setting there.
And then that right there.
Oh man,
Beautiful. Um, I
fired.
I think
Yeah.
that's actually good though, because it's like, again, look at he has colored lines all throughout this too.
Hmm.
Like there's no black on there. It's all
It's all the
that
purple.
yeah.
Interesting.
It's a really nice effect. And that's where I see like this type of stuff is much more common in all those risographs and stuff that we're
Right.
seeing, like those more design aspects. But I think the addition of new characters and stuff was appropriate because, like, okay, you've kind of like establish now the Skywalkers a little bit more on their own, and now that's what you do. You go rebuild the Jedis, and you'd have to add new characters. And
Right.
again, it's that logical character thematic driven thing that seems more in sync with the original trilogy than the
Man.
movies that followed up.
And then he's just like, you liked all those colors? Okay, you get to have them all at the same time now.
Yeah, this feels very Felipe Cazaa to me, a heavy metal artist that I really like, that really does those reds and greens and blues like that, with all of that ticky mark stuff. Definitely some heavy metal.
Oh, and just gorgeous there. Absolutely
That's
gorgeous.
gross with the bug crawling right up his crotch.
And the leg up, yeah. That's just wild. You know, the thing that's really impressive about, if I could sum up the Can Kennedy to me, is the combination of the restraint and wildness.
Yeah.
I think his balancing of those two things is what makes it so compelling, whether you're talking about his rendering or his color usage or his actual drawing as well. You've always got those elements sort of teetering, you know. Look at this, another fantastic mural there.
Yeah, that's like the ultimate goal of all visual art, right? Is a balance between unity and variety. And so he's got like this wild, unrestrained chaos, but then like, yeah, these kind of really minimal compositions and like deep composition simplicity that unifies kind of the totally unrestrained aspects of his art.
Since we've got like 2 pages left, let's just dissect that previous page. This is just a random page. Look at the figures in the background there. How many layers we have to this scene right here. He's just constantly inviting us to see depth in an image like that. And then when it's just about the people talking, we have virtually no depth, you know. It's like, it's just really masterful use of all the different tools of depth.
Well, especially with a fairly, like, there's not much color variation as you go back in this. Like a lot of times he'll balance the cools and the warms out, but you still read the depth just because of the success of the overlaps and all those other depth cues. And that's another thing that allows him to color like a designer, like on the strength of what he's doing as a draftsman, then allows him to color like a designer and think, well, I'm just going to have like a big warm chunk with a couple little blue, but like I don't really need to worry about creating too much variation in color between the particular elements here. And that balances out throughout the whole page.
A couple years back, I did a book that was full color painted for a client, and it's a 60-page book, and I did it in 2 months. And I remember struggling to get some of the pages that were really heavily local color, struggling to get color unity that I was happy with the image. And it just strikes me how nice it is to see something that essentially just uses the color almost duochromatically for long stretches of time, where he's just establishing the scene with the color, and it's almost like just the values, you know, which is not to say that doesn't have color effects to it, but like, it's not like he's never telling us their skin tone or telling us that an apple is red. You know what I mean?
Well, hardly ever does he, if ever at all, does he go with a local color. It's purely just design, like what looks cool. And I kind of miss that. Like, I think a lot of comics are over focused on local color and naturalism. I think a lot of the more, like I keep saying, the more lit comic stuff that's doing these spot colors are going back to, okay, well, I've got red and I've got blue, or like this weird yellow and this weird purple, and the combination of the two, and they are using them just for value and temperature. And I find that really compelling. It's something I'm trying to steal. Here's another struggling with her face a bit. Like those eyes are so traced compared to everything else he does.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then there's the last page. And then there's a bit of a follow-up.
Han
But I don't
Solo
think,
Jr.
yeah, I don't think we really need to talk about.
No,
And you can
no,
see
let's not do that.
the attempt to do the same thing. That's good, but just not as successful. So we had pulled aside. We were looking at the revamped color version, and Sean, you had an explanation for what was going on in there. So
Yeah, it looks to me like it's color clipping.
So this
Oh,
one
and
we
so
thought was a really,
yeah,
really beautiful in the original. And so I went and found the remastered version,
quote
which
unquote remastered.
to my eyes is like, well, you shouldn't be doing mastering at all. I don't know why you would print it that way. Like the only thing I can think is they wanted the blacks to be actually black.
Yeah, and we would have to see the original art to say for sure what exactly is going on the right hand there, but that is fairly horrifying to me.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
hope
so,
that's not what the original art looked like, and this is just a better scan of it, but I doubt it.
no, extremely, really, really doubt they did anything at all. I think the most likely explanation is what we were talking about is clipping. And so if you make a curves adjustment and you are essentially adjusting your black point. So right here, do this as rather than doing it as an adjustment, do it as an adjustment layer. So go to image. That way we can play with it afterwards and see so image, sorry, layer, new adjustment layer, curves. And so what somebody has decided to do here, some person who's been looking at a computer screen too long and doesn't know what painting looks like, has got a light bulb firing in their eyes. I very much doubt that there's any rescanning done. I think this is all probably done post, and somebody was just like, "Oh, the blacks, I can see the blacks." So we can do a curves adjustment here to see what it is. So if you were to pull that up, oh, we got on.
Okay, let me add the curves adjustment to this one. I did it to the wrong. Okay.
Except we got to do it with the curves, not brightness contrast. So if anybody who uses Photoshop, if you do this, you have independent control over it. So if you bring up the black point without making any other adjustment, so just move it to the right, you'll see that you get that look almost immediately.
Yeah. So the other thing that weirded me out about it is it looked okay. It looks like it's got the watercolor effects, but it also looked overly smoothed out, which made it look kind of like, you can see how digital that face looks.
Yep.
Like it looks like someone looked at this and then took a soft brush and like tried to recreate it digitally. But things like this doesn't make sense to recreate that digitally. It looks like an artifacts that you would get from that. Like that's obviously not someone just looking at this and doing it again in Photoshop. So it looks to me like they also like added a blur or something to it.
Well, so I'll show you that now.
Okay.
So once you made that adjustment, probably somebody was disappointed with the squishing artifact. Basically you can see how you get sort of a clumpiness to it in the texture.
Like grainy.
Exactly, because what's happening is that once you've moved that black point and not made any other adjustments, you're essentially contrast adjusting those little, grains of color variation. And so then after having made that bad decision, they made a second bad decision, which is probably like a median filter or something along those lines. So if you go to noise median, and if you were doing this with a higher res file, this adjustment might be a little different. But basically median makes an average, takes a pixel average of the area. So go ahead and zoom in on the click while you're in this interface here. Oh, you know what? You're doing this on the
on the adjustment layer.
Exactly.
So I need to go back and do this on this layer.
Yep.
Okay.
So go to filter median noise. Sorry, filter noise median. And then
Yep. There
you can
it
see it
is.
right there. And so the radius just depends on how many pixels across you want to blur it. And because you've screenshotted
Yeah.
your Kindle version, we can't do this effectively because it's not high res enough.
So
But does that
but
give you?
basically the color is spot on. We
Yep.
just lose the clarity. So they might have had a separate scan of the lines that they then plunked over it, because the
Mm,
lines look nice and crispy. But
probably they had the lettering separate. Yeah. But what I'm saying is if you had the
yeah,
you could use this selectively too. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could do it.
but
Basically,
there it
I have,
is.
yeah,
It's so bad.
it boggles the mind that somebody thinks that that's how it should look.
I love
Um,
that you saw that so clearly too. You're like, oh yeah, I know the dumb thought process they went through. I know the tools they used, and they went, oh, okay, like that makes the color look oh no, okay, well, we'll soften it up a bit. Oh
yeah, and if you look at the original Dark Horse ones in print, I mean, they look great. You know, they printed them on a coated paper and they were photographed well, and you know, it reproduces what to my eye looks like the finished art. It's mind boggling that somebody would do that. But yeah, that's probably the process. Somebody's just like, it needs black, needs to be blacker. They
yeah,
do that, and then they magnify their bad decisions because they brought up the texture by doing that. Um,
yeah.
so if you ever want to do something like this, there are other ways to do it.
Yeah, and this
um,
page isn't the best for the black. I think to see where the black came from, but like down here you can see that doorway. They're looking at it, seeing, okay, that's like this washed out gray. I want it to be black.
yeah,
This right here, especially, I want it to be black. So that
but
was the
damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead.
yeah. We've got our black. But even like this would have looked cooler, because it would have still looked like nice watercolor at least. Like that looks
yeah,
better than that to me. Like I like the grainy look. It makes it look more physical. This made it look digital,
yeah.
but I was like,
It's
they obviously didn't do it digitally. So what in the hell am I looking at? Okay. Well, this is why Sean's the genius. Whoever did this, don't hire them again, please.
yeah.
For
Don't
God's
do
sake.
that, guys. Oh man. Well, it's interesting that they that the version that it made available on for the Kindle or whatever looks fine. It looks okay, you know. But
Yeah, thank God. Because if I would have had to read this, I would have been like, I don't know, Sean. I'm not too into the story. The artwork looks like this weird fucking mushy airbrush thing all over. But to me, this is just absolutely gorgeous stuff for sure.
yeah, really, really enjoyed the heck out of it. And I'm maybe we should can we switch to the camera view here? Um, I don't know about you, but I just ordered a copy of the Light and Darkness War. Carson, be sure to order a copy before we post this video. So this is the typical thing where there might be 15 of them on Abe Books right now, and if we have 15 viewers who are like, oh yeah, I'll do
Yeah.
this. Uh, but yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that and seeing what Tom Veitch and Ken Kennedy were up to before this.
And when they
But
don't
really,
have like a corporate product that they have to stay within the bounds of, when they can actually like speak with their own voice fully.
yeah. But the thing that I really took away from the writing aspect of it anyway is really just sort of pushing the boundaries. And, as a kid who was reading this when I was, like I said, 11 years old, it was really boundary pushing. I remember thinking that the emperor wanting to stick his soul into the,
The
little
unborn
baby
baby. Yeah.
was really kind of subversive. It was like not subversive. It was really right on the edge of something that it was
Just like more adult and dark. And yeah, I mean, it to me, that would have been, like I said, I really felt like this is what, especially the third movie in that new set of sequels, was building up. The third movie seemed really related to the plot of these, and like they had read these and they were trying to do this, but they couldn't have those characters and they couldn't have those actors, and then they like updated it. So like instead of like possessing the baby of Leia in the womb, then you have to have Kylo Ren, who's basically like their grown up, angsty, like late millennial angsty child who's like, mom and dad loved me too much and they were up in my shit. And like you get the guy from Girls, Adam Driver, who's a really fantastic, the guy that played Kylo Ren's a fantastic actor. I'll also throw this out there. I'd only seen him in the TV show Girls, which to me is like the purest statement of like the millennial entitled angsty mentality. I don't know if you ever seen that, but Leah Dunham's show Girls is like the pure statement of that. And he's a character in that who's a really fucking weirdo guy who's trying to be an actor. And the only way that these new Star Wars movies make sense to me is that Adam from Girls is having a dream that he actually gets hired to be in a Star Wars movie. But to me, like Adam Driver is always Adam from Girls. And so watching those Star Wars movies and that weird, like emo fucking villain guy, way cooler if he would have been the possessed baby of, he's like the emperor possessed a baby 20 years later.
Right.
Way cooler.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading some more Tom Veitch and Ken Kennedy, and our condolences to Tom's family. And if you guys have never read any of Rick Veitch's comics, also really interesting stuff. And his Dream comics are particularly exciting, and you get a lot of interesting co-stars if you read. Rick's Rarebit Fiends, he would have a lot of guests talk about their dreams, and guests illustrate different short stories and stuff. It's a really interesting series.
I would also say on the topic of war, since that's very topical, and since obviously, Tom was his brother and they both shared, obviously, I think their outlooks were similar. Rick Veitch had a series for Vertigo called Army at Love that was a satire of our invasion of Iraq. It came out around that time, and that is that's maybe my favorite Rick Veitch book. He's done a lot of great stuff, Brat Pack and Max Immortal and all that stuff. But Army at Love, I think, got really overlooked and really should be a book. Maybe that's something we'll have to go back to as well, because Army at Love is like so good, and I'm really sad it only had like 2 seasons. So check that out as well, Army at Love. I'll have to go order a copy of that.
So it's a little weird every time we step into something like this and we see somebody like Cam Kennedy who just, he's so far above the level of skill that I could hope to acquire. It's a humbling experience to sort of be in the presence of that, artwork. I don't know. I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, he's another one that like I'm gonna go find what else did this guy do, because like, oh, how did I never hear of this dude? Where did he go? What happened? He was on Star Wars. Like everybody should have known this guy. Like, why aren't we talking about him still? So
I've heard a rumor, I don't know if it's true, that he has eyesight problems and isn't able to produce artwork to his standard right now, but I don't know if that's actually true or not. So take that with a grain of salt. I was unable to Google it with before the show. I tried it.
Your satisfaction of factuality.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's actually true. I'm not trying to spread a untrue thing, but that was something I had heard at some point from somebody.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case, but
no.
Thank you guys. I know this is something that somebody mentioned in the comments.
Yeah,
we need to get better at RB Tower.
Yeah. Like to thank RB for recommending this, and it's something that I was excited to get Carson to look at because he had never looked at it before. And certainly in line with some of the things that we talked about in the mouse video as sort of being disregarded by Art Spiegelman as if being fascistic or something. There are certain types of people who think that because you write about war or represent conflict, that means you like war or like conflict. And maybe there are, maybe there are people like that, and probably there are, but there are other things like, I think writing about anything you want to is valid. And I can think that I like to think that you can make anti-war statements through the depiction of battle, and even in a
Yeah.
corporate comic context like this, as a 11-year-old, the image of those scavengers coming over the hill with their robots trying to raid the dead corpses, um, you know, was informative. I mean, it's not Red Badge of Courage, but it's depicting something,
So it's like saying
something
Steven Spielberg is a fascist because he made Saving Private Ryan.
right.
Thanks for following along, and RB, thanks so much for suggesting these comics because I never heard of Cam Kennedy before, and that was a huge glaring hole in my understanding of great cartoonists. So appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. You all have a good one. Okay.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.